It is the 41st millennium. For 10,000 years, the Imperium has dominated the galaxy. There is only war. Every human soul, from the most highborn lord to the most basic servitor, is dedicated to the service of the God Emperor of mankind. The Imperium's battle fleets and armies, from the conscripted soldiers of the Astra Militarum to the elite space marines of the Adeptus Astartes, keep humanity safe from alien threats and cosmic horrors beyond imagining. But there is another war. It is the one in which I serve.
Commence for translation.
Our war is not one of battlefields and fleet engagements. It is waged by the dedicated agents of the Imperial Inquisition. It is fought in the cities and hives of the Imperium. In the back streets and the forgotten sublevels. In hive cities like Tertian.
We are surrounded! Don't get overrun!
Alright.
Through this door!
Let's do this. What's up,
For
everybody?
if the Inquisition fails.
Sounds good, bro. Okay. Let's start the lore. Let's see how well this works.
I am vengeance incarnate. I am justice delivered. And I embrace my destiny. I will not let my suffering consume me. Nevermore.
Hey, how's it going? Yes, you are, I would assume, the first one here. It's gonna be... So today, I mean, we're gonna learn a little bit about the 19th chapter. And...
Once
play some
upon
games.
a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore. While I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door.
Oh, you resubscribed.
'Tis some
Oh, my
visitor,
heart.
I muttered,
You melted
tapping
it.
at my
I feel
chamber
it.
door.
Love.
Only this, and nothing more.
I appreciate you.
Ah, distinctly I remember, it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly, I wished the morrow.
Hey, you wanna let me
Vainly,
know if the
I
audio
had
is
sought to
good?
borrow from my books surcease of sorrow. Sorrow for the lost Lenore,
Just curious to see if
for
the
the
game
rare
is
and
getting drowned
radiant
out by the
maiden,
game, or the game
whom
is
the
getting drowned
angels
out by the
name
lore.
Lenore.
Or maybe I'm being drowned out by
Nameless
both.
Forevermore.
I used to think there was a righteous justice, that whatever I did, it served humanity. There is only one way left to aid mankind, and it does not include our survival. This is not our universe, and it never was. You cannot create legends and myths in a laboratory. The
Let me adjust
savior
it.
of deliverance, the Raven Lord, Corvus Corax, a man who ponders weak and weary, lost in the melancholy of a cruel universe, or vengeance incarnate.
Let's
The
see.
Black
how's that?
Death to the traitors of the Imperium, the Primarch of the 19th, the Raven God. He's a figure of myth to a story told and retold thousands of times. A lord to a legion that stalks the enemies of the Imperium, waiting for the perfect moment to deliver the killing blow before melting back into the darkness once more. But who is the Raven Lord? Who is Corvus Corax? How did he wage war? How did he think? How did he endure? The story begins in the 30th millennium. A child rested within a gestation capsule. Brief glints of a face was seen through the cracks of his eyelids.
Sure this is the
It
way
felt
we're
like a
supposed to
dream,
go.
but everything changed as this capsule, deep in the earth of terror, was ripped out, torn into the tide of the reflective plane of madness. The wall. Claws scraped against the glass and metal. Creatures of sentient thought were trying to break in. The capsule was strung along these ocean tides until it suddenly burst back into real space, and a young boy emerged from the wreckage. It was cold. The capsule had crashed and sunk deep into the core of a world, the moon of Lycaeus, deep beneath a frozen glacier. The boy looked around himself, rationalizing and understanding his environment in a way that was beyond human. Where was he? He had no memory of how he was here. Who was he? Number 19. There was something he knew deep inside the core of his being. He was number 19. In a situation where any of us would be overtaken by fear and dread, he showed ignorance, only simple confusion. Voices. The boy began to hear voices getting closer, and the sound of a high-pitched buzzing. Moments later, the small chamber the boy and his capsule wreckage occupied was broken into. Men and women in blue overalls, carrying strange machinery, peered into the chamber of near darkness and was stunned. A child, with deathly pale white skin and midnight black eyes, that would come to see more than most mortals could ever dream. These were the first humans the boy had ever seen. A voice called from behind them, screaming at them for stopping. A large man then stepped forward, wearing a different uniform and carrying a whip in his hand. His shouting stopped as he glanced at the strange child. It was impossible to find someone here. A small girl stepped out from the machinery, trying to peer at the commotion. The man with the whip told her to get back, snatching hold of the young girl's hair. The young boy did not like this man. He hated his unjust cruelty. He hated the noise of the girl screaming. We all remember that anger. It comes from witnessing cruel men bully others, especially someone who couldn't protect themselves. The boy lunged forward, slamming the vile man to the ground, and then pulling off his head, offering it to the small girl. She smiled as the humans in blue overalls began to panic. Her name was Euphemia Nastur, and she asked his name. He was 19. Number 19. The child had been discovered kilometers underground, packed around rock and ice. The blue uniformed humans were afraid, but also intrigued. Something was different about this child. His speed, his strength, the sheer aura of majesty that overtook them when they glimpsed him. He was special. He was a jewel found under ice and stone. Something that had to be hidden from the men with whips. Terror, the epicenter of the emerging Imperium of mankind. It is the late 30th, and a great host of warships, numbering in their thousands, are launching to the stars to reunite the lost colonies of mankind. The Great Crusade had begun. The Emperor, a figure of immense power, is seeking to bring humanity out of the horror of the age of strife, but he also seeks to find his sons, his primates, scattered to the stars by creatures of sentient nightmare. Like how the Primarchs were sons to him, the Emperor created legions of warriors that were sons to them. Legiones Astartes. It was the 19th, the Raven God, who are created with the meshing of tribal humans on terror and the gene seed of an ashen skinned, dark-eyed boy whose occasion was thought to have been all but lost. The 19th Legion launched with the Great Crusade, absent of the ironwork, and quickly built a bloody reputation. Its warriors' capacity to switch from cold, impassive scrutiny to swift, brutal action soon made the Legion the subject of dread amongst those who would deny unity with the Imperium. They were brutal and efficient, but oppressive and uncaring. They were cut from the same cloth as the men with whips, the men the young boy despised. Millions of miles away in Segmentum Tempestus, the strange boy had arrived alone on the moon of Lycaeus. He had landed on a prison world that orbited the world of Kiovar. The humans in blue overalls were slaves, innocent or not. Thousands from the planet of Kiovar had been cast to this brutal mining prison. Generations condemned to a lifetime of service in the cold and dark mines of this moon by its tyrannical ruling tech guilds. They were a malnourished, tortured people who faced cruelty and injustice daily. It was these people that found the strange child, buried deep amongst rock and ice. The prisoners of Lycaeus took him in. They swore that he was special and feared what would happen to him if enslaved by the prison overseers. They gave him shelter, they gave him sustenance, and they gave him love, and they gave him a name, Corvus Corax. The prisoners put their own lives at risk to keep him safe. They gave him their wisdom, as the boy received lessons in philosophy and politics. With their frozen fingers they sewed him clothes that didn't fit for long, as the boy began aging faster than any mortal man. He had friends, such as the small girl you freed near Nestori, and others, like the brothers Bran and Agapito Nev. He had connections to ordinary people. Corax spent years in the dark and damp conditions in the subterranean prison. He was impressive, gifted with an innate, fierce intelligence, and imbued with a natural sense of justice that was tempered by his teachers, who understood the importance of teaching him humanity and patience. He was gifted in other ways too. When one night, under the tutelage of one of his teachers, a surprise inspection caught them off guard. Corax was almost found. As the guards peeked into his hiding spot, he was ready to fight, preparing to rip them apart. But when the guards looked directly at him, there was silence. They didn't see him. His will to hide had manifested physically. Corax had already made the shadows his home, but that night became its blast. He could make people not perceive it. Corax began to explore the prison, growing and learning the millions who suffered under this unjust, tyrannical rule. He was born with a complex understanding of science and technology, but he was complete by love. The people of Lycaeus' love. They gave him everything, and so now the young man, who for years had seen how his family had been mistreated, made a vow. He promised to free them. Corax planned for war.
Yes, you have brothers.
Said the Emperor, smiling at his son's death.
17 of them. You are the Primarchs, my finest creations.
17.
Corvus asked, confused.
I remember that I was number 19. How can that be so?
The Emperor's expression grew bleak, filled with deep sorrow. He looked away as he replied.
The other two?
He said,
That is a conversation for another day.
Where are my brothers now? Are they with you?
You and the other Primarchs were snatched from me by the strange powers of the warp, thrown across the galaxy on unnatural tides. That is how you came to rest beneath a glacier on this moon. Yes, I have seen what befell you, learning your life the moment I laid eyes upon you. The rumor of you, of a magnificent being who led a rebellion here, has traveled farther than you realize. And it was word of this that attracted my attention. Your brothers, those I have found, were similarly scattered to far-flung worlds. Like you, they are all great warriors and leaders. That was my gift to you. You are supreme commanders, with intellect and physical ability unmatched by anything in the mass of humanity. I engineered you from my own genetic structure to be my sons and my lieutenants in the Great Crusade.
What is this crusade? How many of my brothers have you found?
Most of them,
replied the Emperor.
I have vast armies, the Legiones Astartes. As you are crafted from me, so they are crafted from you. The Primarchs are the generals of those armies, leading humanity's reconquest of the galaxy. The long night, the age of strife, has ended. The remnants of the old empires smolder out in the darkness, the dying coals of humanity almost smothered by dark. The Great Crusade fans the flames into life, bringing with it reason to drive out superstition, enlightenment, to replace barbarism. With your help, I will unite humanity and lead mankind to rule the stars.
There was so much to take in, but Corvus knew it to be true. Not only the words of the Emperor seemed certain, the idea of what he described messed with a much deeper feeling, knowing he was a Primarch, that he had been created to fight and to command, explained much that Corvus had never understood about himself, on a level that he understood in his spirit, and was encoded into every cell of his body. Corvus knew what he was.
I swear my loyalty to you,
said Corvus, sinking to one knee in front of the Emperor. He met the Emperor's gaze, and felt elation like no victory had given him before.
I am your son, your Primarch, and your will shall be my command.
That is good,
said the Emperor.
I have an army waiting for you. They are the Raven Guard, highly decorated and distinguished in my campaigns already. When you are ready, you will assume command of the Legion.
Am I not ready now?
Corvus said, having been elevated and then deflated by the Emperor's words.
Not yet, my son,
said the Emperor.
But soon you will emerge to join your brothers and take your place at my side, and at the head of the Raven Guard. First, though, tell me of Kiavar. What are your intentions?
To bring peace to both the world and its moon, and to heal the wounds of the past,
said Corvus.
With your help I will succeed.
Peace is the hardest goal to achieve. Victory, the cessation of war, the demilitarization of our opponents. These we can obtain with might of arms and perseverance. Peace, that is an altogether different beast.
Corvus frowned, but nodded slowly. The Emperor sipped from his glass, his gaze unmoving.
Tell me again, then. Tell me of the wounds you and your followers inflicted upon this world, and of the peace you would bring to it with my help.
The boy had become a man, filled with an absolute hatred for the oppressor and cruel. Corax vowed to free the people who had cared for him. He felt for them. He truly cared. He began to plot. Using his gift of near invisibility, Corax explored far into the other complexes of the prison world, speaking to the people, the young and old, the innocent and guilty. Thousands were awestruck by the majesty of this demigod figure. You could imagine being in front of him, emotions of wonder that spilled forth. but yet also some fear too, as you realized he could crush you without effort. Corax created a network, links on a chain, bonded by unjust cruelty and oppression. Corax as a lone figure mastered the shadows, even hiding in plain sight in front of the cruel overseers. After years of patience, gathering intel, supplies, and willing recruits, they were ready, and Corax and his million-strong slave army rose up. The conflict was brutal. Many thousands gave their lives for freedom, young and old alike. No matter how long Corax lived, he would always be haunted by what he had asked of his people, even remembering a young 13-year-old girl who gave her life in a sabotage mission. Some never got the chance of freedom, poisoned by the overseers in an attempt to punish the rebels. Corax gave special treatment to those who delved to such depravity. The family that had raised the Primarch fought with him, side by side, until millions like Euphrenia Nasturi, Bran, and Agapito Nev breathed their first free air. Lysaeus was free, and at the zenith of this victory a golden eagle stormbird descended from the sky. Golden light spilled out from its ramparts. The rebels murmured with wonder and cried tears of joy. Corax simply saw a normal man, until when the figure came close enough, he was hit by a wave of reverence. A golden warrior, so majestic, so perfect. Wisdom poured from the stranger's eyes. It was his father, the Emperor of mankind. The Emperor had come for his son, and the two spoke for hours, the awkwardness of strangers quickly fading. Corax had always been aware of his uniqueness. He had gifts and intellect that was beyond any mortal, but this also isolated him too. Even his friends looked at him with wonder. Now in the ashes of victory and freedom, he wasn't Corvus Corax to them. He was the savior. But the Emperor told him of his brothers, his equals, people who could truly understand him. He was elated, perhaps deep down relieved that there was a way to alleviate the loneliness that comes from leadership. The Emperor asked Corax his intentions, to bring peace to both the world and its moon, and to heal the wounds of the past. It was in a way naive. Peace is the hardest goal to achieve, and Corax needed to learn the truth about the hard road to peace. The Emperor left Corax to finish the war he had started, returning when he was ready. Lysaeus was freed and renamed to Deliverance, but the moon was still in danger from the tech guilds on the planet Kievar. The rebels were outnumbered, facing a superior force in technology and numbers. Even as the guild sought to launch a counterattack, Corax knew the terrible order he must give. Using the steep gravity well that tethered Kievar and its moon, the Primarch committed a full-scale atomic bombardment of the vast Manufactorum cities below. Victory was achieved. Thousands died, but millions were saved. At least, that is how Corax justified it. Even as men, women and children burned on the surface, as each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. The first axiom of victory is to be other than where the enemy desires you to be. The first axiom of stealth is to be other than where the enemy believes you to be. The first axiom of freedom is that justice without force is powerless. Force without justice is tyranny.
Overwhelming.
The war was over. Thousands lay dead because of the actions of Corax. He had learnt the lesson the Emperor had spoken.
Yeah, there's like
Peace was the hardest thing
the
to
game
achieve.
audio.
Corax now had to heal the wounds of the past,
Yeah, well,
the
that's what
hatred of the
I'm listening
enslaved,
to the lore
and the hatred of the
of,
previous
my favorite,
enslavers. But this goal
Primarch.
of the savior of deliverance would have to be
No,
put
no, you're
on
not
hold,
delusional. I'm just
as
listening
something
to, like,
greater required
the history
his
of
blood, sweat,
Corvus
and
Corax.
tears. The Great Crusade. With the liberation of deliverance
if you want, I can
and the surrender of Kiev,
turn down
the
the game
system
audio.
was brought into the fold of the Imperium. Corax held true
Is
to
the
the
game
vows
audio
he
too
gave
loud?
that day he met his father. I am your son, your Primarch, and your will shall be my command. As a leader
Okay,
of a
here, I'll turn
rebellion,
down the lore a
Corax
bit.
had no true experience of war, armies, supply lines, sieges, or logistics.
There you go.
And spent some time under the tutelage of the Emperor and his brother Rabute Gilliman, his Primarch brain absorbing the information in a way that he was able to add his own thoughts and perspective to it. Even spending time with his brother Fulgrim, before a boy who grew up in damp and claustrophobic conditions, he found no comfort in the lavish halls of the 3rd Legion. Opulence was too much of a reminder of his people's oppressors. He was more at home in humble places. When he was ready, his father gifted him his sons, the 19th, the Raven Guard Legion, thousands of warriors created from his own genetic material. But when Corax met with his sons, he was not impressed. The 19th Legion had over a century of conflict under their belt and had brought thousands of worlds into Imperial compliance. But the way they fought disgusted the Primarch, often using their tactics of infiltration to place themselves behind enemy lines, to enact cruelty, and to cut down retreating survivors. They had developed a culture of being cold-blooded killers, uncaring brutes who took joy in oppressing those that they saw as beneath them. Several of the Legion's high-ranking officers were displaced or reassigned to non-command roles, including Lord Arcus Fall, who had commanded the 19th for over 3 decades. Veterans who had fought since the early days by even Horus's side were banished, given autonomy to fight far from their Primarch. With Legion and Primarch reunited, the 19th could become a fully fledged member of the Great Crusade. But for this path, it needed more warriors. And who better than the warriors of Just Heart? The free people of Deliverance chose to follow their savior. Many of us understand what it is like to truly believe in someone and be willing to go to hell and back for them. In their thousands they joined. Many like Euphemia, the girl who had been with him since the start, joined the ranks of the crew and maintenance. And for many others, like Agapito and Bran, they gave themselves to something higher, as many of the young boys who gave their blood in the name of liberation joined the ranks of the Legiones Astartes. Corax's family followed him to war, to the stars, and Corax valued them, for they understood his values. The first axiom of freedom is that justice without force is powerless. Force without justice is tyranny. Corax wanted to wage a just war. He had to fight for something right, and he found that in the liberation for the slaves of Deliverance. And again, he found it in the Imperial truth. The long night, the age of strife has ended. The remnants of the old empires smolder out in the darkness, the dying coals of humanity almost smothered by the dark. The Great Crusade fans the flames into life, bringing with it reason to drive out superstition, enlightenment to replace barbarism. Corax, his family, and his legion headed to war.
Intel gathering stuff. Be ashamed to leave all these simple
Take the universe and grind it down to the finest powder and sieve it through the finest sieve, and then show me one atom of justice, one molecule of mercy, and yet you act as if there is some ideal order in the world, as if there is some righteousness in which the universe may be judged. What is just? Is one person's justice someone else's injustice? We are all the villain in someone else's story. And by whose code do we judge the righteousness of one's anger? Corax and the 19th casted themselves across the galaxy, blazing a trail from war zone to war zone, bringing worlds into imperial compliance for the Great Crusade. Corax began molding his legion on the principles and tactics he had learned upon Deliverance, till his Terran and Deliverance-born sons. The Raven Guard were masters of stealth, embracing covert tactics over brute force. To the
I called you Jazzy.
Xenos and non-compliant worlds, they would find their defeat
I'm not
planned
gonna call you
with a
Jizzy.
masterful stroke. Superhuman-sized warriors would emerge from the shadows on lightning-fast raids, led by a figure that could be barely glimpsed by the human eye. Corax's personal combat prowess was staggering. Armed with his lightning claws, he was the Raven, an omen of death, as none could match his speed, combined with his ability to mask his presence. Numbering amongst the greatest duelists in the Imperium, even amongst his brothers, the Legion and the Primarch fought non-stop for decades. Where they could, Corax and the Legion minimized civilian casualties as much as possible. The tactics reflected the man perfectly, but not all saw its wisdom. Horus, the first
I'm
found
alone.
son,
I should
loved
not
by
be alone.
all, had tension with the Raven Lord. The Battle of Gate 42 was forever in the conscience of Corax, as a newly appointed War Master Horus was eager to show results following his ascension. Horus utilized the Raven Guard in a frontal assault, whilst the other ally legions finished off the enemy. It was counter to the Legion's ethos and tactics, and many of Corax's sons died because of Horus's vanity, seeing people used as tools, cruelly wasting life. Perhaps Corax saw a hint of the behavior he despised from the tyrannical tech guilds of his homeworld. He swore never to fight besides Horus ever again. But for all the Raven Lord's noble qualities, there was a darkness to his life. Down in the prisons of Deliverance, the boy was raised by people who were oppressed. Many people whose crime had been having a different opinion. People who were destitute. And people who were just born there. They were angry.
Oh,
They wanted
I'm playing
justice.
DarkTide.
But many wanted vengeance.
DarkTide.
Corax's genuine desire for justice was always followed by the
And
shadow
I'm learning
of
about Corvus
vengeance.
Corax.
It burned him when the guilty avoided the justice he thought they deserved. His sons, Agapito and Brand, loved their savior, their primal, but were cowed when Corax's anger overtook his strategic mind. Over the Great Crusade, many Raven Guard would be the cost of this weakness. This thin line between justice and vengeance scared him.
Sorry.
Because of the grisly reminder of his
guys.
dark potential, his dark mirror, the Night Haunter.
Yeah, I'm
his
streaming.
brother,
Sorry,
Conrad
guys.
Kurz. Conrad echoed his brother
I
in
was
ways
holding
that
him up.
terrified Corax. Their skin shared death's pallor. Their eyes were sinister orbs of ink. They were both guided by a sense of justice, but one a liberator, and the other a torturer. Both dominated the shadows, calling them home. Conrad was a reminder to Corax what he could have easily been without the love shown to him as a boy, and also what he could still be when his inner monster was unleashed. For all of us, it is our light that most frightens us. We fear standing out. We fear taking the steps to be the best versions of ourselves. But it was his dark that most frightened the Raven.
Woof. Y'all are wild, bro.
Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore, Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou, I said, art sure no craven, ghastly grim and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Much I marveled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door,
some emotional damage for
bird
sure.
or beast upon the sculpted bust above his chamber door, with such name as Nevermore.
Let me go see if there's...
Lorgar's grey eyes danced with the light, despite the strain on his body. The opposite of chaos is not order, brother. It is stasis. Lifeless, unchanging stasis.
Ooh,
With the last grunt,
Oh, no,
Lorgar's strength gave. Quivering hands could no longer keep his brother's weapons back.
Here it is.
Corax promised in a hiss, the saliva flecking Lorgar's eyes and
Not enough
cheeks.
time to equip it.
Here is the death you so richly deserve.
The claws reached his
gonna
brother's
do warrior.
face.
Okay.
Slowly, the metal burning hot, they sliced over Lorgar's golden skin,
Isn't that crazy?
inch by inch, blackening the golden flesh, cutting into the meat of his cheeks.
Bro,
Even
watch
should he
out. Secret
escape,
Lives of
he
Mormon
would bear
Wives.
these scars until the day he died. He knew this.
But hey, to each
He
their
did
own,
not
you know?
care. The psychic fire wreathing them both flared in response to Lorgar's pain. Corax closed his eyes to spare his sight, and instinct cost him his quick victory. Lorgar threw the Raven Lord back again. The Luminarum rose, ready to strike, before a burst of smoky fire launched the Raven Lord up from the soil to come down on Lorgar from above. The Wordbearer smashed the first claw aside,
prefer...
striking the fist with enough force to shatter the gauntlet completely. But even as the scythe-long claw blade span off into the surrounding melee, the second claw struck home. Meter-long talons sank through Lorgar's stomach, the tips glinting to the side of his spine as they thrust from his back. Such a blow meant little to a Primarch. Only when Corax heaved upwards did Lorgar stagger. The claws bit and cut, soaring through the Wordbearer's body. Luminarum slipped from the impaled Primarch's fists. Those same hands wrapped around Corax's throat, even as the Raven Lord was carving his brother in half.
For the Emperor.
Corax breathed, untroubled by his weaker brother's grip. Lorgar crashed his forehead against Corax's face, shattering his brother's nose, but still he could not free himself. The Raven Lord gave no ground, even as a second, third, and fourth headbutt decimated his delicate features. But he lied to us. Lorgar spoke through lips that produced more blood than language. The claws jerked, snagged against Lorgar's enhanced bones. Corax tore them free, inflicting more damage than the first impaling had done. Blood hissed and popped as it evaporated on the force-fielded blades. Father lied, Lorgar said again. He was on his knees, hands clutched over the ruination of his stomach. Corax's black eyes gave nothing away. He stepped closer, his one functioning claw raised to execute his brother. Do it, Lorgar snarled. The psychic wind, the misty fire, all were gone now. He was as he'd always been, Lorgar, the 17th son, the image of his father, the one soul in 20 who never wished to be a soldier. And here he would die, at the heart of a battlefield. The foul irony of the moment settled on his shoulders, feeling grotesquely amped. He couldn't move his legs. His body was a temple to nothing but pain. He could barely even see his executioner, for his psychic efforts had left him quivering with both weakness and a vision blurring ache in his mind. A faint outline met his gaze, the blurred image of scythe blades raised high. "Do it!" Lorgar screamed at his brother. The claw fell and struck opposing metal. Corax looked to meet eyes as black as his, in a face as pale as his own. His claw strained against a mirroring weapon, both sets of blades scraping as they ground against each other. One claw seeking to fall and kill, the other unyielding in its rising defense. Where the Raven Guard's Primarch's features were fierce with effort, the other face wore a grin. It was a smile, both taunt and mirthless, a dead man's smile. Once his lips surrendered to rigor mortis.
Corax,
Said the other Primarch.
curse.
Corax said the name as the curse it was.
Look into my eyes and see your death.
Said the
Oh my
progenitor
God.
of the Night Lord's Legion. Horus had betrayed the Emperor. He had betrayed them all. And with him, 3 more legions had risen their flags of treachery. It was unthinkable. Corax had no love for Horus, but he respected him. He was the best of them. The Raven Guard, Iron Hands and Salamander legions were dispatched to the Istvan system to bring the traitors to heel. It was legionary against legionary, Primarch versus Primarch. The battle began. A symphony of violence so overwhelming, it was like the very universe was ending. The greatest soldiers of humanity fought tooth and nail, surrounded by explosions and fire the size of titans. Warriors clashed, drowning in the mix of mud and blood. Corax and his Raven Guard attacked the traitors' flank, each side suffering heavy casualties. The first wave had struck the traitors in their entrenched position, and now prepared for a retreat to cycle in their reinforcements.
Oh!
The Iron Warriors,
Oh my
Night
God!
Lords, Alpha Legion and
Get the
Word
fuck
Bearers stood
out!
upon the hill to their
No.
rear, and as the Raven Guard approached, dragging their wounded and dead behind them,
Oh
they
my
voxed their
God.
brothers, glad to see them. But an eerie silence fell between them. Something was wrong. A lone flare shot
I'm
sky,
still too new, I don't
exploding
necessarily
in
know
a
what this
hellish
means.
red glow, and the 4 legions fired. Corax had seen numerous, untold atrocities in the name of enlightenment, even himself being a part of conflicts he was not proud of. But for the first time in his life, Corax cried. The Raven Guard fell in their thousands as the Iron Warriors, Night Lords, Alpha Legion, and Word Bearers unleashed their volley. They were surrounded. Corax leapt from each pocket of the conflict, fighting like a warrior possessed. The Raven Lord flew at the traitorous Astartes, trying to buy space and time for his sons. Thousands fell to his lightning claws until he saw him. Lorgar. Corax on his metallic raven wings thrust himself at his brother, who was now wreathed in a dark psychic energy. The Primarchs clashed, Lorgar screaming over the sounds of ceramite clashing, justifying his actions. Corax didn't understand. Why? Why were they doing this? What madness has taken you all? Corax overpowered his brother, impaling him on his claw. His anger boiled over, but before vengeance could be his, an opposing claw matched him. Eyes as black as midnight stared back. Kurz, the Night Haunter. Corax had Lorgar mortally wounded, but could he take them both? The Raven Lord made a choice and retreated, using his jet boosters to launch himself back towards his sons, a decision that would come to haunt him. The Raven Guard was surrounded. For weeks they were being picked off. The 80,000 strong Legion were massacred to a few thousand, scavenging ammo and armor from the dead. They were chased onto a mountain by Angron and his World Eaters. Corax and his sons preparing to make their last stand, when in their most dire moment, a single cruiser dived into the atmosphere. Bran, captain of the Avenger, had penetrated deep into enemy lines and gunned down
I guess
to the
I'm just
surface
trying to kill that guy's
rescue his
dog.
legion. Corax and the last 1,000 Raven Guard hauled themselves to safety. The Raven Lord and the Legion were bloodied. Thousands of their friends and brothers lay dead. Each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor of Istvan 5. They were betrayed. The Legion was in ruin. Thousands of the children of terror and deliverance were gone. The soldiers who had put their trust in the Savior were gone. Corax was a broken, wounded thing as he pondered weak and weary about the hell he had just survived. He knew he had to think of the Legion, the Imperium, his father. Corax set the Avengers' course for Terra. The Emperor's eyes were open, glittering orbs of gold that bored into Corax's soul. Motes of golden energy danced in those orbs, but their look was not without kindness. The Emperor stood, his armor melting away into wisps of golden thread, to be replaced by robes of flowing silver that had cascaded from his body like an argent waterfall. The Emperor stood,
You guys are distracting me.
seeming diminished in size but not present
You
by the
guys-
removal of his armor.
You guys are too
forming
funny.
insubstantial steps that allowed the Emperor to descend as effortlessly as a normal man walks down a flight of stairs. The Emperor reached out a hand, and Corax felt hot fingers upon his brow. Energy flowed through the Primarch, knitting his shattered bones, stemming his pouring blood, healing wounded muscles and organs. The Primarch gasped, filled with love and adoration.
Stand.
Corax did as the Emperor commanded, his strength restored.
I am sorry, Father.
Said Corax, dropping to his knees once more.
I know that your labors are important, but I have to speak with you.
Of course you do, Corvus.
Said the Emperor. The majesty and power had gone from his voice, leaving only a tone of respect and admiration.
You have endured much to come here.
Corax felt a hand on his arm, and he straightened under the Emperor's guidance. His father appeared less majestic, the light dimming beneath his skin, his face taking on the features of a normal man with brown eyes, while long, dark
my God,
hair
I fucking
flowed
love-
from his scalp.
Is this your true face?
Asked Corax.
I have no such thing.
Replied the Emperor.
I have worn 1,000,000 faces over the millennia, according to need or whim.
I remember this one.
Said Corax, dimly recalling a dream he had glimpsed when in the glory of battle.
You wish to sacrifice your legion.
The Emperor seemed genuinely surprised.
In what cause?
Oh no.
I do not do it out of woe, but necessity.
No.
Explained Corax.
I must atone for the failure at Istvan.
Oh, I'm dead.
For it would tear
Oh,
me
I've
apart as
lost.
surely as my wounds did, if allowed to fester in my heart. Forgive me, but I cannot defend Terra, idly awaiting my fate to come to me.
The Emperor did not reply for some time, his brow creased slightly with deep thought.
No, please.
Corax waited patiently,
Yes.
eyes fixed to the Emperor's face.
I concur.
The master of mankind said eventually.
It is in your nature to cry havoc and wreak the same upon your foes. Yet there is no need for sacrifice. I am reluctant, but you have my trust, Corvus. I will grant you a gift, a very precious gift.
Once more the Emperor reached out his hand and laid it upon Corax's head. For an eternity Corax was overwhelmed by the mind of the Emperor. An existence that had spanned more than 30 millennia tried to crowd into the Primarch's thoughts, sending pain searing through him. In a moment the pain had ceased, The imprint upon his memories, a shard of what had come before, the tiniest fraction of the Emperor's being. Still reeling from the psychic onslaught, Corax wondered if this was how the Astropaths felt during the soul binding. Their minds conjoined with the psychic might of the Emperor. Flashes of new memories coursed through his thoughts, blocking out all other sensation. A succession of images burned into his psyche. Corax realized his eyes were closed and opened them.
Oh, thank you guys.
The Emperor was watching him, waiting patiently for his son to explore the gift he had given him.
You have given me the secrets of the Primarch project,
said Corax. His voice was a whisper of amazement.
The parts that were relevant to the creation of the legions, yes,
said the Emperor. He did not smile.
I must return to the webway. My absence will be sorely missed. That is all the help I can offer you.
Corax was broken, both spiritually and physically. He and his sons were shaken by the apocalyptic battle they had just endured. For 98 days they had been hunted by bloodthirsty warriors, but they were not safe yet. It was a nerve-wracking escape for the crew and the survivors aboard the cruiser, the Avenger. Utilizing the Legion's unique reflex shield technology from Kievar, they were near invisible and meandered through the traitorous fleet's
Fucking took that
blind
straight out of
fire
my
for
hand.
days.
Crazy.
Unnerved by the possibility of a lucky shot, Corax sat at the command throne, never resting, vigilant for any course changes or updates. It was upon his lonely throne that the Primarch began to ponder. He was filled with regret. Perhaps he should have faced Kurz, Lorgar, and even Angron. It would have cost him his life, but wasn't that worth it? To deny the traitors valuable leadership in the war? Wouldn't that save millions? When he had liberated his home, he had dropped atomic bombs on the planet Kievar. He killed thousands, but he ended the war, saving millions. A deep melancholy cast its shadow over
Get the
Corvus
fuck out of here. We're gonna fuck
Corax.
you
He
up.
was a Primarch with a superhuman frame,
Oh shit.
but he willed his wounds not to heal, punishing himself for his perceived failures. He told his sons, "We have no room for hope. We plan and we act. Hope is for dreamers and poets. We have our will and our weapons, and we shall dictate our own fate." Bold words, but devoid of the spirit he had inherited from the people who had raised him. Corax and the surviving Raven Guard made their way to Terra through ever-increasing violent warp storms, and after a grueling journey, they made it to the Sol system. They were met with suspicion, but finally Corax made it to the surface, greeted by Malkador the Sigillite
I should take
and
the
his
tutorial
brother
again.
Rogel
I don't know how to
Dawn.
dodge.
He demanded to speak
Feel
with his
like-
father, only to be rebuffed. He argued with Dawn and Malkador, telling them that they could not stop him, but they were silenced. A presence entered the Primarch's mind. Corax saw a vision of the Emperor straining with concentration upon a throne of gold, until he opened his eyes. The golden light enveloped the Raven Lord. You can imagine how it feels to stand before the full power of the Emperor, like staring directly into the heart of a nuclear reactor, a roaring mass of unbridled power, but combined with an overwhelming sense of majesty and love. The Emperor healed his son. He filled Corax with hope and purpose again. Corax wanted to rebuild his legion. He wanted to atone for his failure at Istvan. He wanted to fight back, and his father granted him his wish. He granted him the secrets of the Primarch project. He gave him a mental key to the secret gene laboratories deep in Terra. It was a secret Corax had promised to guard with his life. The
stop
Emperor,
fucking
making him
shooting me.
swear to destroy even his own sons
shooting
in
me.
its protection. The Raven Guard were not designed to fight behind walls. Their tactics of stealth and hit and run were where they excelled. With this gift, Corax could rebuild the Legion and harass the traitors behind their lines, and also prove to the various worlds of the Imperium that Horus was not invincible, and that the Imperium was worth fighting for. Corax was grateful. He asked the Emperor why does he not sail from Terra to deal with the traitors directly. It was then that the Emperor revealed that this war was about more than Horus, that the true enemy came from the warp, and the future of the species was at stake. Demons. Demons were the true enemy, and the Emperor was fighting them as they spoke. Fighting them within the Eldar's webway tunnels located deep below Terra. This required unparalleled concentration, so the Emperor was locked upon his golden throne. This was a war unlike any humanity had ever faced. For Corvus Corax, the Horus heresy had truly begun. Chaos, the war, the true enemy. Upon the apocalyptic fields of Istvan V, Corax and the Raven Guard caught their first glimpse of the influence of this true enemy. The Galvor Bag, Lorgar's blessed son, were the first to dive into the Raven Guard lines when the betrayal was revealed. They were transformed, their bodies enlarged, spikes of bone, jutting hooves and knotted muscle burst from their armor. They were like ravenous beasts that took moments of pleasure drinking the blood of the fallen Astartes. This strange influence wreathed Lorgar during the Primarch's clash, and now his father, the Emperor, was fighting it inside the webway located below Terra. It was the Emperor's secret project, utilizing the Eldar's webway tunnels instead of the wall. But this chaos had broken into the webway itself, forcing the Emperor to use all of his psychic might to protect Terra's gates, lest demons overrun it. Corax couldn't understand. Why had his brothers allied themselves with entities of the war? Why did they betray the Emperor and the Imperium? This blindness was something that many, such as his family, Bran, Euphemia, Agapito, and many other ordinary humans who fought with the Raven Lord had come to see. He did not understand that truth was subjective, not an absolute. Take the universe and grind it down to the finest powder and show me one atom of justice, one molecule of mercy. Justice was a construct of a subjective experience. It was a Primarch's weakness. Corax believed so completely in the Imperium and the Imperial truth that it shocked him when others didn't feel the same as him. It was the wisest choice. It was the best choice for the species. And yet many over centuries have refused compliance. His naivety in understanding that some people are just looking out for themselves was a human weakness. Corax, Bran, Agapito, and the now elderly Euphemia were with him aboard the Avenger, the Gene Seed project in tow, and his surviving Raven Guard and a contingent of Custodes set course for Deliverance and Kievon. They were heading home. This resurgence was desperately needed by Corax. There was a part of him that was damaged since Istvan, though perhaps it had always been a part of him. This melancholy that many of us have had the misfortune of experiencing, the feeling of being tired with the world, a mind fog that cannot be easily shaken, preventing any moments of joy or happiness. On rare occasions throughout the Great Crusade, an unlucky legionary of the Raven Guard would find an overwhelming depressive state would envelop him. His hair would darken, his skin would pale.
We got you,
within
bitch!
would meld strongly with the gene seed of Corax. Only death or fierce constant battle were the only options for release. It was this part of himself that Corax feared the most. The part he had told his father he was most afraid of. The part which could turn him more into his dark counterpart. Curse. The Gene Seed Bank gift was more important than Corax would ever realize. Arriving back into their home system, the Legion reunited with the garrison upon deliverance. Only 4,000 Raven Guard existed in the galaxy, but that number was going to change.
I don't have Discord
Arduously
streaming,
extracting
so
the
you
specific
should be...
gene seed from the Gene Seed Bank, Corax could create legionaries with the maturity rate of a Primarch. Decades could be
Gank
shortened
this
to
bitch.
months. The experiments continued for weeks inside the training fortress, the Raven Delve. 500 aspirants underwent the new process, combining with the gene seed of Corax, and the results were incredible. Fully fledged Legiones Astartes emerged in a matter of weeks. Though lacking true combat experience, they were the future, the salvation of the Legion, and Corax's mind. The process for 2,000 more began, but it was not salvation, but disaster that lay upon the horizon. The escape from the bloody fields of Istvan was a miracle. Bran and Euphrenia aboard the Avenger bursting through a gap in the enemy lines. It was almost too good to be true.
Fuck you.
The fact that the Avenger should have been garrisoned back upon deliverance had not escaped the Primarch's mind. Commander Bran knew the Primarch would not take well to the truth, that dream visions had been the source of his rescue. Corax's melancholy was obvious to one who had known him his whole life. Upon returning, the Primarch had even murdered a word-bearer captain who had been with the Legion for decades. Upon deliverance, following the Edict of Nicaea, Corax told his sons he could smell the taint on him. This melancholy seems to lift with the success of the first 500 new Astartes, donned the Raptors, but all went to disaster with the next batch of 2,000. Corax's suspicion of Istvan had been well placed. Alpha Legion Astartes, upon the killing fields of Istvan, had infiltrated the survivors of the massacre, grafting the skin of the Raven Guard's fallen comrades onto their own. These hidden agents struck in tandem with a rebellion exploding upon Kievan. Corax's words, to bring peace to both the world and its moon, and to heal the wounds of the past. It was the words he gave to the Emperor when they first met. But the wounds upon Kievan and its previous Tech Guild masters had not healed. They had festered. Another
Hey, what's up,
failure that
Fulcon? How's
struck
it going,
the heart
man?
of Corax. The disguised Alpha Legion operatives tainted the Gene Seed Bank.
Fulcon,
and the
you were
results
instructed to get onto
disastrous.
Discord.
The new 2,000 recruits began to devolve and mutate. Young Astartes, recruits from Deliverance, gave themselves to their home's savior and followed their ancestors into service, joining the legendary Raven Guard Legion. Men like Navar Hef were excited to become superhuman warriors in the service to the Imperium, but spikes of bone, scales, feathers, and other mutations began to manifest. They were monsters. Some were so devolved that they had to be locked up. If this disaster was not enough for the distraught Primarch, a force comprising of the rebellious Tech Guilds attacked the Legion. Corax once again went to battle with the very people who had enslaved his family. The fighting was furious. Corax leaping from zone to zone, crushing the enemy, but it was a bluff. The Alpha Legion's true goal was elsewhere. The Tech Guilds were just a distraction. The
That's
Raven Delve,
rough.
the Gene Seed Bank, was left exposed. Corax was furious. He intended to go to the Raven Delve himself, but Bran begged him not to, saying that he was prepared to destroy the Raven Delve to prevent the Guilders from gaining the Gene Seed. But he could not whilst his Primarch was inside. Corax's son stood up to him. He saw in a reflection his face contorted with anger and hate. He looked like Curse. His chance to rebuild the Legion was gone. His
Should
chance for
we
vengeance
gamble
against
a bit?
Lorgar and his treacherous brothers was gone. His escape from melancholy was gone. But Bran's words tempered him, tempered his lust for vengeance. Corax trusted the mission to his sons, and they all rose to the occasion. Navar Hef and the other mutated
not
recruits
streamed,
locked
bro.
below the Raven Delve heard
You're
the
not
fighting
streamed. I don't
and
have,
burst from their quarters and fought off the Alpha Legion operatives,
I don't have
throwing
Discord.
themselves at them without armor or weapons, using their fists, claws, and sheer will to liberate the stronghold. The Raven Guard won, but their hopes of rebuilding was lost. But this war was not over. Corax stood before the 4,000 last Raven Guard. Even his mutated sons stood in their midnight armor. They could still fight, still show the colonies of the Imperium that they were not abandoned to Horus. The Sons of Deliverance brightened their father's darkening heart, and Corax vowed to destroy every warp-tainted creature in the galaxy.
Oh. North.
We have been touched by forces beyond the Emperor's own design. You know this, brother, as well as I do. No good comes from that which in evil is born, no matter the purpose or cause. I look at Kurz and see myself. How could the Emperor create such demigods with science alone? Warriors that can withstand tank shells, leaders whose every word must be obeyed, creatures with powers far beyond any Thunder Warrior or Legionary. Why do you think the Emperor decided not to simply recreate his children when they were lost? What unique gifts of darkness did he pass to you? I used to think there was righteous justice.
He continued, his gaze moving from Russ to the warriors at the doorway.
That whatever I did, it served humanity. There is only one way left to aid mankind, and it does not include our survival, O King of Wolves. This is not our universe, and it never was. You cannot create legends and myths in a laboratory.
Other faces were in his memory, vying for attention, demanding that their messages be remembered.
You often spoke of the Fenrisian notion of a good death.
Yep.
Said the Raven Guard.
If there is such a thing, I desire it. I should have taken it on Istvan. Time and again, fate presented me with opportunity, but I denied it. Against Kurz and Lorgar. I could have ended their vileness. And Angron. How many has he butchered since I fled his axes? Rational, sensible decisions, weighing advantage and cost each time. But mistakes. All. The universe does not want us. It is unnatural that I survived.
He sighed, thinking of Marcus Valerius and the red sash he wore so proudly.
Visions. Visions sent by the Emperor. I think not. Something else guided those that rescued me. Another hand moved my warriors to intervene at Istvan. Powers
look like
that we
shit
do not
forever.
willingly serve still bend us to their will through the manipulation of others. I was not meant to survive Istvan, and all that has befallen us is simply a correction of that failing course.
Corax paced slowly to the first cell door on the red level. He paused for a moment, repulsed, and driven on in equal measure. It had to be done. Inside, he found a creature crouched in the corner, its skin white beneath clumps of thick black fur, its eyes round, ebon discs that stared at him without any obvious intellect. Even so, he could not ignore the similarities. The pale flesh and the dark eyes. They had fought the war, and they had won. Now was the time to put right the assertion he had made to the sorcerer Natherkin on the forge world of Chonstax II.
I have made several oaths in my long life, but I have been careful to swear only those I could fulfill. Except for one.
He told the beast, He crouched next to the pitiful thing, and it shuffled closer, comforted by his presence, though the sight of it broke the
What the
Primarch's
fuck?
heart.
One I now think may be beyond me. I looked into the face of our enemy, into the heart of the force that had corrupted them. I knew that, even if we killed Horus, that power could not be eradicated completely. Chaos will return with ever greater strength if we allow it. If we give it the vessels it seeks, and feed the ambitions that drive the weak to its embrace.
Corax recognized the adoration and trust that radiated from the deformed raptor. He laid one massive hand upon the former legionary's head, and the fingers of the other curled around his throat. The creature's mouth worked a few times, and drool dribbled over Corax's hand and fell to the floor in thick goblets.
I remember everything. And I remember my exact words before I sent that fiend back into the warp vortex that had birthed it.
Tears stung the Primarch's eyes.
I promised him I would destroy every warp-spawned, chaos-tainted creature in the galaxy before I die.
The mewling, growling thing that had been Navar Hef met his gaze.
And I have always kept my promises, my son.
Corax and the Legion fought back. On his metallic raven wings, he led his sons in a lightning campaign behind the traitors' lines. The worlds garrisoned by the traitor legions found danger in the shadows.
Fucking freaked
Out of
me out.
nowhere, Astartes in black armor, some with monstrous forms, cut them apart. Any chance of fleeing was met with a demigod figure that appeared from nowhere. Worlds were liberated, and by the time the traitors had learned of the assault, the Raven Guard were already at their next target. For years, Corax and the Legion fought in the shadows, but the cost of the heresy over time began to weigh heavy upon him. He learned more about the enemy, Chaos. He despised its corruption. He hated it. So when he learnt the truth about himself and his brothers, it cut deeper than any physical wound. The Primarchs were creations of science and the war. Corax hated part of himself. The surety of the Imperial truth that had guided him to raise worlds was a lie. Weak and weary, the Raven Lord pondered his place in the galaxy. As the fires of the heresy crescendoed, Corax found his brother, Leman Russ, and his space wolves under siege. They too had been decimated by the traitors over years. They too had sons that had been transformed by the influence of the warp. The Wolfen, to match Navar Hef's mutated raptors. It was at the moment of near defeat. A ghastly, grim Corax lamented to his comatose brother. He should have taken the death offered upon Istvan. He had failed his people. He hadn't avenged the massacre. His naivety had cost lives. He was a creature of the war. His desire for vengeance was almost consuming him. Though both the Raven Guard and the Space Wolf survived, the darkness never left Corax. News came from the Sol system. After 7 brutal years of conflict, the heresy was over. The Loyalists had won, but the Emperor was crippled and was interned upon the Golden Throne. Corax felt heavy, carrying the burdens of trauma and failure that not even his family could lift. Something that became worse as he had one more promise to fulfill. The second batch of raptors, sons like Navar Hef, had been mutated by Chaos, but they had fought side by side with their father and brothers throughout the heresy. They gave their blood, sweat and tears for Corax. They deserved more, but over time they were getting worse. They were devolving. Locked away as they began to fall to frenzy and madness. Over 1,000 of Corax's brave sons were in pain. With tears in his eyes, he kept the promise he had made to destroy every warp-spawned, chaos-tainted creature in the galaxy. Corax killed them, one by one, with his bare hands. The responsibility was his. The Raven Lord was a giant, a powerful demigod figure, but everyone has a limit. Corax locked himself in his personal chamber in the Raven Spire upon deliverance, begging daily for his father's mercy. For an entire solar year, the savior of deliverance locked himself away from his son, none able to bring him out. As the Legion held breath for what felt like an eternity, Corax stepped out of his chamber. A year to the day he entered, something had changed. Perhaps the determination the people of Deliverance saw centuries ago had returned. Corax left the world alone, his midnight black eyes locked upon the warp storm, the Eye of Terror, and he gave his last words to the Imperium: nevermore. Forks of black lightning leapt from an outstretched hand, rippling through the body of a word-bearer. Greasy smoke issuing from a rent in the warplate. The legionary collapsed.
We have to fall back across the portal bridge,
said Kaltar.
We must fetch Lorgar.
Fetch Kaltar. The voice came from behind them, as pure as molten gold in the dark apostle's soul. Its tones lifted his spirit in an instant, filling him with warmth. He turned, as did the others around him. The archway glowed with power, showing a vista of a gigantic citadel cathedral through the haze within its black frame. In front stood a gigantic figure, thrice the height of the legionaries, a golden-skinned entity wrapped in a cloak and robe of flame-room shape that swirled from his body. In one hand it wielded a wickedly spiked mace that throbbed with black power. The other bore a rod of intricately wound metal, tipped with a three-eyed skull, layered with golden sigils that constantly weaved around each other. Eyes of uniform azure burrowed into Kaltar.
I heard your woe, my son.
The voice washed through the dark apostle like a soothing balm,
I got lucky with that.
stilling his agitation, strengthening his resolve. Still, the presence of his Primarch was near overwhelming, and he fell to his knees, head bowed.
My Lord Aurelian, forgive my weaknesses. A creature of demonic spite has disrupted the great works here.
I see no demon.
Kaltar glanced back towards his brothers. The entity that had pursued them had reached the top of the hill amid a storm of bolter fire. It cast legionaries with the sweeps of glittering claws, leaving tattered remains draped across the stonework of the outer shrine.
This is no demon.
Lorgar raised his wand, beckoning to the blood-stained whirlwind tearing through the last of the Dark Apostle's warriors.
Come to me, brother.
With a last flurry of activity that turned another legionary to shards of ceramite and ribbons of flesh, the apparition coalesced into a recognizable figure. It was of equal height to the demon Primarch, clad in black battle plate with long taloned gauntlets. A pair of wings stretched out from its ornate backpack, fashioned as intricate metallic raven feathers. The face was as pale as snow, gaunt, the eyes as dark as coal, framed by a shoulder-length black hair. Kaltar felt his breath dying in his lungs as he looked upon the unmistakable features of Corvus Corax, the Primarch of the Raven Guard. A flurry of questions flooded his thoughts, but all remained unanswered as the Primarch spoke.
What has happened to you, brother?
I have ascended.
Said Lorgar, He indicated Corax with a twitch of his rod.
I might ask the same of you.
The Raven Lord strode forwards, intent on Lorgar Aurelian. Kalta'ar and his warriors scattered before him, grateful to be free of his wrath. Marduk and his coterie closed about their Primarch, but a look sent them away.
I am what I always have been,
said Corax.
I am vengeance incarnate. I am justice delivered. This place beyond the veil has revealed what we all are. Underneath the veneer of humanity our Father crafted for us. We are of the war.
Have you come to make an oath to the powers that are your true creator?
No. I swore to destroy all chaos taint from the galaxy. You will be the first fallen brother to die beneath my blades.
I am not the creature you fought at Istvan,
said Lorgar, raising his mace.
Nor am I.
Kalta'ar barely followed the lunge of Corax, so swift it was. A black wind threw him aside as dark fire crackled from the rod of Lorgar, with a thunderous shockwave that hurled the Word-bearers to the ground. The two demigods clashed. The Raven Lord pondered, weak and weary, but never more. The boy from Deliverance, who had been embraced by an oppressed people. People who filled him with an innate sense of justice. To a young man who learnt to master stealth in the shadows of a prison, promising to free the people who loved him. The young man had friends and family, but he always felt different. He was the savior. He was surrounded, but alone, until a figure wreathed in golden light descended from the sky. His father, the Emperor. He completed him, and he gave him all he needed to fill the hole in his heart. The man became a Primarch to the Imperium of Man, trained by the best of the Imperium, believing with every fiber of his being in the Imperial truth. He took his people to the stars, and they fought the worst the galaxy had to offer. But Corax's human weaknesses slipped through. The resentment of the people who had suffered was reflected within him. He despised opulence. His need for justice skirted along the edge of vengeance. It was an anger that would bubble to the surface in his worst moments. Always fearful of becoming like his brother Curse. He was honorable, kind and fair, and was filled with purpose, until he lost nearly all of his sons upon the field of Istvan. His spirit was damaged. A melancholy gripped him, dragging him down to that sunken place. But he kept moving forward. He found a way to rebuild his legion, a way to rebuild himself, and erase his feelings of guilt for surviving. But this hope was taken from him when his sons were corrupted, and the Legion's future could not bring him atonement for his failings. But his sons were there for him. They fought the betrayers with the last of their strength for years, as the fires of the heresy raged on. But then he learnt the truth, that his foundation upon which he had condemned worlds, the Imperial truth, was a lie. Demons were real, and a part of him was of the war. He had already hated his own failures as a man, and now he hated his very being. As the heresy drew to its close, his father was gone, forever locked upon his golden throne, just when he was most in need of guidance. Then his raptors, his mutated sons, who had fought throughout the heresy despite their corruption, began to devolve. So he put over 1,000 of his sons out of their pain, bearing the responsibility of another failure. His limit had been reached. The darkness had overcome him, and he lay in that mind fog, wallowing in the despair caused by centuries of pain and suffering. But something changed. A universal truth found him. The truth that is inside all of us is the capacity for change. He let the fear go. He embraced what he was. He was a creature of the warp. I am vengeance incarnate. I am justice delivered. He could be the vengeance of the Imperium. He could be the justice that the traitors so richly deserved. Here lies the Raven Lord, hunting down his treacherous brothers as a shadow in the war. A creature of justice, leaping from the darkness. Nevermore would he suffer treachery. Nevermore would he fail anyone. Nevermore would he fail himself. Nevermore would he let justice go undelivered. Nevermore.
Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked, upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken, quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor. And my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore.
Okay, well that's the end of that video on Corvus Corax. That was put together by the Amber King. If you guys haven't checked him out, you guys should check him out. Very good. Although I will say it was extremely difficult to listen to with all of you motherfuckers in my ear. Holy shit, that was rough. I do. That's why I'm gonna hop off DarkTide. I'm gonna hop off DarkTide. Is there room for one more in Marvel? Okay, sweet. That's fucked. Okay, here, hold on. Give me a second. I'm gonna go ahead and switch games real quick.